had a mission to erase the Armenian nation altogether.
Today, we are still here.
We failed. We lived.
We lived far from our fatherland, but we lived with our language.
We lived with our dances and songs.
We lived with our schools and churches.
Everywhere we lived Armenian.
We survived and thrived.
We became teachers, musicians, actors, inventors, doctors, world leaders, chess grandmasters.
When we marched proudly, waving our holy flag.
When we danced, we moved mountains.
When we sang, the world heard us.
We lived far from our fatherland, but our fatherland lived in us.
Խոսենք հայերեն,
Հրենք հայերեն,
Կարդանք հայերեն,
Երգենք հայերեն,
Բարենք հայկական բարեր.
My great-grandmother's brother, Sarkis Semerjan, was a survivor twice over. He fled his village with his family during the Hamidian massacres and came to settle in Kharbet. When the rest of the family fled just before the Armenian genocide, he stayed behind to finish dental school. When the genocide began, he and other Armenian doctors were forced into the Turkish army to treat the same soldiers who were murdering their friends and family. He only narrowly escaped before they made the Armenian soldiers dig their own graves before they were killed.
Arusyak Boyajan is our great-grandmother.
During the genocide, Arusyak, her two siblings, and her mother were forced out of their house.
Her sister was taken and killed.
They had one blanket to live off of, and her brother Hagop was lost.
Arusyak and her mother had to flee, and they made it to Iraq.
18 years after the genocide, Arusyak and her mother found Hagop's name on a genocide survivor orphan list in Syria.
They were reunited. They had to move on with their lives without their older sister and father.
In 1915, when the genocide started, my great-grandfather and his family lived in Bursa, Turkey, and they owned a silk farm factory. And basically one day the Ottoman army came in and took over the factory, took over the business, and they were relocated.
So the way our great-grandfather was able to survive the genocide was because he was a musician and he knew how to play the trumpet. So he actually joined the German army as a musician and then joined the Russian army after that, and then finally relocated to Iran.
This is the story of how my great-grandfather survived the genocide. Nushan Tashjan was born in Marash, Turkey in 1910. In 1917, his father went to work and never returned, so his family knew that the Turks killed him. He headed to Aleppo with his mother and his siblings, with the rest of the Armenians in his village. While traveling, he got lost and was separated from his family. He ends up in an orphanage in Beirut, which he later escapes because he heard that his family is in Damascus, Syria. He reunites with his family and moves to Beirut. He grows up to marry an Armenian woman and has 6 daughters, including my grandmother. He died in 1983.
Ես պիտի պատմեմ հորս մեծ մայրին բամությունը, Եղիսաբեթ Եղիազարյան, որ 10 տարեկան էր երբ չարթերը սկսան։ Թուրքերը շոկեգարքով Կիլիկիա դարին իր ընտանիքը եւ հոնդեղեն քալեցուցին իրենց մինչեւ Դերզոր։ Այդ ճամփորդության ընթացքին իր մայրը մահացավ։ Երբ Դերզոր հասան, բաժնվեցավ իր մնացած ընտանիքեն եւ արևանքվեցավ Օդար ընտանիքի կողմը։ Պետք է աշխատեր այդ ընտանիքին համար իբր ծառա։ Ամիսներ վերջ, որբահավաքի նախաձեռնությամբ փոխադրվեցավ պոլիս եւ Գաբրիել հայկական որբանոցի մեջ մինչեւ 16 տարեկան դարձավ։ Այդ տարեկանին պետք է ցկեր որբանոցը եւ գարկադրեցին, որ Ամերիկա գա եւ ամուսնանա հայ երիտասարդի հետ։ Այդ հայ երիտասարդը իմ հոր մեծ հայրն էր Ասադուր Պետյան, բսակվեցան Նյու Յորքի Քրիկոր լուսավորիչ եկեղեցվո մեջ եւ տեղափոխվեցան Գրանիցերի, ուր իմ մեծ հայրը ծնավ։
Hi, I'm Sevana Papazian.
Hi, I'm Sister Papazian.
And this is our genocide story.
Our great-great-grandmother, Mali Torian, was abandoned by her in-laws in the desert at the age of 14 with just her and her baby.
She had to walk from Kharpet, Hayastan, where she was born, all the way to Surya.
While she was walking, her baby died from starvation and she had to bury her baby with her own hands.
Along the way, she got kidnapped by Kurds and almost got raped.
She luckily escaped and found her way to Syria, and she found a new husband, and she got married and started her new family.
And that's our genocide story.
This is the genocide story of my Med's mama's baba and mama, so my great-grandparents. My Med's mama's mom was from Kharpet. Her name was Shani Kabaklian, and she was taken on the march, the death march, one of them, at 6 years old, and her parents ultimately died on that march. And she, as an orphan, was taken to an orphanage in Beirut, a Catholic orphanage. And my great-grandfather was from Marash, Hagop Kabaklian, and he had his parents killed as well in a march, and he ended up in that same Catholic orphanage. But he also had a sister who was still alive, but they were separated once this happened. And his sister's name was Mary Lou, and she was taken by Protestant missionaries, whereas he was taken by Catholic missionaries. And they ultimately met up 50 years later through some ties and were able to reunite together.
"2020 marks the 105th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide and 105 years of Turkey's campaign of genocide denial. Each year, the Armenian community of Chicago gathers here, before this monument, to honor the memory and the sacrifice of our 1.5 million martyrs. Each year, we are led by a procession of our clergy and our community leadership out of the church and down the steps to this sacred place to surround this monument. Each year, an honor guard of Homenet Men Scouts and Armenian Youth Federation members respectfully place wreaths at each side of the monument on behalf of our entire Chicago Armenian community. Like the rest of us, each year, this monument hears the messages offered by our congressmen and other dignitaries who stand before it, joining us to lend their support to our community and for our sacred cause. It hears the compelling calls of our activists, urging us to redouble our efforts. And it hears the inspiring words of our youth, who have taken up the torch passed down to them from our genocide survivors to lead the way along the path for justice for the Armenian nation. Like so many other Armenian genocide memorials in cities around the world, this year our monument stands alone, like a sentinel, as we shelter in place due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This year, its solitude is a stark reminder of the emptiness of Western Armenia, devoid of its rightful owners, the Armenian people. It bears silent witness to our collective loss, both then and now. Like the citadels of Van and Kars, this monument is made of stone. And like the scattered stones of the monastery of Surp-Garabed in Mush, this monument beckons us to return, both to regather here in our community center after the virus has subsided, and more importantly, to regather in Western Armenia, to rebuild our nation on our native lands once justice is done.
Justice for the Armenian genocide.
Արդարություն հայոց ցեղասպանության համար.
Ретвиса for armeniska folkmordet.
Δικαίωση για τη γενοκτονία των Αρμενίων.
Rechtvaardigheid voor de Armeense genocide.
Justice pour le génocide des Arméniens.
צדק לרצח העם הארמני.
Justicia por el genocidio armenio.
Правосудие армянского геноцида.
Արտարություն հայկական ցեղասպանության նահատակներին.
Justice for the Armenian genocide.
نطالب بالعدالة للقضية الأرمنية.
Արտարություն հայոց ցեղասպանության նահատակներում.
Justice.
Արդար հատուցում.
العدالة. Justicia.
Justice. Rechtvaardigheid.
Δικαιοσύνη.